Hello everyone. Today I wanted to show you how to make a basic music switching system for your games. So here I am in the third person default template, and I've made a folder called Imported Audio, and I want to show you what I've already done. I made a little folder inside of that called Music Assets, and inside of there I started by importing 1, 2, 3 different loops that I created. I didn't create these all on the same day. They're just some clips that I had laying around on my hard drive, so they don't really have much to do with one another. But I already knew they were looping because I've used them for other lessons. So I imported those WAV files into this folder, and then I simply made sound cues out of each one. So there's 1, 2, 3 sound cues. Just to make a note of this, you'll note that I did set looping to true not only in the sound wave assets, but also in the wave player. In the wave player, you can see that looping is set to true inside of the sound cues. And the sound cues are nothing more than that. They're just simple wave players hooked up to the output, and that is all. Okay, so now that we've got that, I'll go back one level, and I'll make maybe another folder in this same directory. New folder, and I'm going to call this one Music, I made a space, Music Manager. And inside of there, we're going to make our Music Manager. Our Music Manager only needs to be a blueprint of type actor. So we will right-click in this empty space, select Blueprint by left-clicking it, or Blueprint Class by left-clicking, and we will select the actor class. That's all it really has to be. I'll name this BP_Music Manager. And just so that it's not overlooked, what you want to do right away is to take this and drag it into your world. Doesn't really matter where it is. It just has to exist in your world. Sometimes when it comes to things like this, what I'd like to do, while it is selected, you can see it's selected here in the world settings as well, in the world outliner, is to go to the location transform and just zero that out by clicking this button. And that will put it just off to the side, okay, at the 0, 0, 0 coordinate of the world, okay? But now it's in the world and we can make use of it. Now let's do the scripting that's going to be necessary here. So I'll double click on our BP_Music Manager, and let me close some of these other tabs that don't matter as much. The Music Manager, and I'll start by going to, let's say, the event graph, because there's not going to be a visual element to this. It's all going to be a matter of functionality. Okay, so we're going to test this first, just using a series of prototyping inputs, and I'll use the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on my keyboard. So I'll right-click, and I'll search for keyboard, and you want to be in this section, keyboard events, okay? So you can see early on we've got some numbers. So I'll choose 1. I'll do this again, keyboard. The next one will be 2. And then keyboard once again. Scroll down a little bit and choose 3. Okay. These are just temporary. We're going to replace them with something else later, but this will be a way of prototyping our system. Now, I'm going to leave this docked and go back to my main view into where I have saved those sound cues, which are here under Music Assets. You don't have to organize this necessarily exactly as I have, but do keep it organized in some way that would make sense to anyone. Now that the sound cues have been made, what I'm going to do is hold down, well, I'll click the first one, but I'll hold down either Control if you're on a Windows computer or Command if you're on a Mac. And while holding down Control or Command, I can highlight the other 2. Now I can left-click on any of them, and while holding down the button, drag them up near the tab of the Music Manager, and then put them into your components tab like this. Now I can let go, and we've got these 3 audio components right here. Okay? So let's try a couple of things here. One thing I want to make sure of is that none of these auto activates, because remember, the actor is in the world, and if it auto activates, that means that as soon as I make use of, as soon as the game starts anyway, everything here is going to just wake up and start playing simultaneously. And as a matter of fact, let me compile and save and see if that's the case. Okay, obviously we don't want that behavior. So we'll go back into the Music Manager, and while I have the first cue highlighted, I'll search for Auto, and we'll turn off Auto Activate. And we're going to do the same thing for the other two cues. And now, none of them should play. What that garbled sound you heard a moment ago was just all three of them playing at the same time. So now if I play test this, because we disabled auto activate, we don't hear anything at all, but we are in play. Great. Okay, so now once you have these, you can drag any of them into the graph, and associated with each one of these, we have various functions. I can pull off of the cue and simply type play. I can also pull off of the cue and type stop, like so. So let's try this just with the number 1. When I press the number 1, it's going to play this first cue, and when I release the number 1, it's supposed to stop this cue. So let's see how that goes. Compile and save, and I'll go into play. Okay, remember auto activate is turned off, but if I hold down 1, you know why nothing happened is because one thing I forgot is that since I'm using inputs here, we have to enable input for this actor. And input is only enabled for our player character by default. So what I'll do is I'll make use of this event begin play node, pull off of there, and type enable input. And that's going to want the player controller ID for our main player, which is at index 0. So we'll pull off of here and type get player controller, and you want the one that's under game, right here, get player controller, and it will default to index 0. But if there was more than one player and you wanted this to use the player controller from a different player, you would just have to put its index here. Okay. And that's all that this needs for now. So now I know that input is enabled, and I'll try again. Compile and save, and go into play. Okay, right now I'm holding down the 1 key, but when I release, it stops. And I can start and stop that as many times as I want just by holding the number 1 down and then releasing it. Okay, that's working great. Another thing you could do, if you wanted to, instead of stopping the music, we'll delete that, is you can pull off of the cue. This is an audio component, and you can type fade out. And this is cool because you can specify a custom fade out duration. Let's set that to 4 seconds, for instance, to make it very obvious. And I'll just put that in there. Go back into my map. And I'll hold down number 1. And I still haven't released it. As soon as I do, the music will fade out to silence over that 4-second duration. Okay, so that's another option we have. I'm actually not going to be making use of that fade out function because we're going to do something a little bit different for that. So let's go back to our main view, and still in this imported audio, I think directory is where I'm going to set all this up. So I'll make another folder, and what I want to do is call it concurrency and attenuation. Okay, we're going to make some assets that can define the concurrency for each one of the music assets that we might be playing. And once we create an asset that defines those behaviors, we can assign it to each and every one of the sound waves or sound cues, as you'll see in a moment. So we're going to go inside this concurrency and attenuation folder and make a couple of special assets. So in this empty area, I'm going to right-click, go to Audio, and we're going to make a sound concurrency asset, like so. And I'll call this one Music Concurrency. And remember, concurrency refers to how many audio streams can be playing simultaneously for anything that is within this concurrency group or any audio asset that has this assigned. So I'll open that up, and you can see by default, it's a 16 voice max count. But I'll highlight that, and I'm going to simply set it to 1. And then, instead of setting a fade-out time, we can use this feature here called voice steal release time. What I like to happen is that when a new piece of music starts, that the previous piece of music fades out. This only goes to 1 as a maximum, so I could script, maybe, yeah, I think that 1 is maximum. Let me just see if I can type something other than 1. 2. Oh yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. I'll do a 2-second voice steal release time, or maybe even 3 seconds. Yeah, you could also do this programmatically using that fade-out node if you wanted to, but this is just a much faster way of getting going. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and review this now. We have anything that's going to use this concurrency, only one of those sounds can play at a time, and when it starts, the existing music is going to fade out over the duration of 3 seconds. So I will save that concurrency. And let's now look back at our assets here. If I go into the sound cues, I should be able to look up concurrency, which is down here, all right? Now, if I were to click this checkbox, override concurrency, then I would be able to just manually set all of those things that we set up in that asset. But I don't need to because I made the asset, and I can just pop it in right here. It's going to be the only one you've made, so it should be the only one you see. That means now this sound cue must use this concurrency, okay? So we're going to save it that way and make sure that we do all of the sound cues like that. And we're going to look for concurrency and pop that in there. And of course, if this is selected, if our concurrency asset were selected, like this, let me, hold on a second. What you could do is, just pop it in there with the, with this button here. So let's clear that. Knowing that I've got it highlighted in my content browser, of course, I could just do like that, and that would be the same. Okay, and now, excuse me, we're going to get the last sound cue, which is this one. And is that? No, that's the sound wave, excuse me. The sound cue. And we're going to do this one more time. Concurrency set. We're going to use that concurrency asset. Save. Okay, now let's go back to our music manager for a moment, and we don't actually have to use released for any of these inputs 1, 2, and 3. So we've got horizontal music 1 already in use. I don't care what order we do this in because, like I said before, none of these really have anything to do with one another. But I can, let's say, duplicate Control D or Command D, the play, and go ahead and connect the execution wire and set the target to this other cue, like so. All right. Hopefully you can see what's happening here. These are not the same cue, and there's one more cue, which I can bring in here. I can duplicate the play again, Control D or Command D, connect that to the input execution pin, and use this as a target, okay? Now, because I enabled input on begin play, I should be able to press 1, 2, or 3 and switch pretty smoothly between any of those 3 looping sound cues. So I'll compile it and I'll save it, and we'll hit play. So we have nothing yet. I'll press 1. And now, if I go back to our music manager, we have anything that's going to use this concurrency asset, only one of those sounds can play at a time. But I don't need to because I made the asset. So we have nothing yet. I'll press 1. I'll let that go for a second, and then I'll press 2. Let's try to press 1 again. Let's press 3. And press 2. Okay, now this cue seems a little loud, so let's open that up and reduce its volume a little bit more. I already did off screen, but I still think it's too loud, so let's do 0.35. I want them to sound subjectively equal volume. So let's start with that music. I might have turned it down a little bit too much. So let's go 0.425. Save. Try that again. Okay, that should be close enough. All right, now, normally in a game, you do not use keyboard inputs in order to change the music. So let me just do a quick save all, just so we don't lose any progress in case we crash. It's usually triggered by other gameplay events, such as, for example, on begin overlap of a trigger box when you're entering a dangerous area. For instance, it doesn't have to be that, but it can be things like that. So let's try that approach. I'll zoom out quite a bit. And I'm going to the Place Actors panel, and we'll type box until we find a trigger box. And we're going to drag it into the world. And let's just lift that up in the air a little bit. And I'm going to scale it so that my character can definitely walk through it. Okay, that looks pretty good. And notice that when you can see it in the viewport, but when I go into play, you don't see it. And under normal circumstances, that's desirable, because if you're using a trigger box to cause an event to fire, you don't want that trigger box to be visible typically while you're in the game. But in this case, excuse me, in this case, though, I do want to keep that visible. So while that is selected in the Details panel, I'm going to type Hidden until I find Actor Hidden in Game. Right now, it's set to true, so I'll just set it to false for now, so when I go into play, I can see it. All right? And we'll make 3 of these, and I can do that just by Alt or Option dragging the gizmo, like this. And all 3 of them should be visible now. Okay. So what I want to have happen is that depending on which one of these portals I walk through, it's going to change the music. That's the idea. So we haven't scripted that yet, so we'll back out, and I'm going to go back into my music manager, and I'm going to delete the temporary inputs that I used just to test the system. So we'll hit delete. Now we have to make what are called custom events. So you'll right-click, and you'll choose Add Custom Event, and you want it, this one, Add Custom Event under Add Event. Add Custom Event, and you'll want to name this right away. So I'll call this Play Music 1. And actually, I'm caps locked. This can have, I think, yeah, hold on. Play, can I have spaces? Yeah, I thought I could for custom events. Play Music 1. And this is not going to fire automatically, right? Like a number, for example, or an input that I can press. I've got to call this somewhere. But that's okay. It still will output an execution pulse as long as it's called somewhere. So let's make 2 more of these. Add Custom Event. And this will be called Play Music 2. Like so. Connect the execution wire. And One more. Add custom event right here. And this will be called play music 3. Like that. Okay, perfect. So I'll compile and save our music manager, which is still in the level. And if I wanted to, I could even delete this part of the code, but I'll just leave it just in case we need to test anything else out at any point. But, later on, when you determine that you absolutely don't need input enabled anymore, you can absolutely delete all that. That's unnecessary code at this point. All right, compile and save. Now, what I want to do is I want to make use of what's called the level blueprint. So I already have it open, but I'll close it just to show you how you can access that. So you want to go to this icon right here, list of world blueprints available to the user for editing or creation. When you left click that, you'll find the option to open level blueprint, and there it is, okay? So what we can do now is, excuse me, I can simply select this first portal. And just by having it selected, I beg your pardon, just by having it selected, if I go into my level blueprint and right-click on the graph, my first option says add event for trigger box and a bunch of identification information. That's the one that I have highlighted. So I'll twirl down the disclosure triangle and I'll use a collision-based event, which is going to be add on actor begin overlap, like so. Okay? And the other actor is going to be the object reference for our third-person character. So what we'll do is we're going to cast to our player character. Now, this is a little bit dangerous because, excuse me, we have a player start in the level. The actual character is not in the level. So when the game begins, if it can be a matter of just a few milliseconds of timing. If this hasn't loaded the character, by the time it's calling the cast, then the cast is going to fail, okay? But we're going to have to do cast to BP underscore third person character. Get that in there. And let's just find out, we'll promote this to a variable. But I want to see if that cast is failing, so I can pull off of here and use a print string. And I'll type the string myself, cast failed. And either it will fail or it won't, but I want to see if it does in case I have to actually put the player in the world instead of the player start. So let's see. Okay, I don't see anything, so that means our cast is working. Okay, the cast is succeeding. That's great. So on begin overlap, therefore, of that first trigger box, as long as it is the third-person character, what we can do now is we can get a reference to our music manager very easily. In fact, we don't even have to cast to it. It's in our world. Let's see, I'm going to find that. Music manager. Have to search for it. Music manager. And I'll just drag that into the level blueprint, like so. That's a reference to it. Very, very, very simple, okay? And from here, I can call any of those functions, such as play music 1. Okay, call function play music 1. That's the custom event that we made, play music 1. And there we go. So if I do only this, compile and save, then all I have to do when I go into play mode should be to walk through this first portal to start the first music. Okay, so that worked. And we can proceed in exactly the same way for the other two trigger boxes. So this is the first trigger box. And what I'll do then is I'm going to simply highlight this trigger box, go back to my level blueprint, and right-click, add event, which is the first option, collision on begin overlap. And we don't have to cast again, or we should not have to cast again. I will pull off, because we promoted our character reference to a variable, we can say other actor, and we can make a conditional out of this. I'll type equal, okay? And we will use our, as third person character variable, we'll get it. And this basically means that if the actor that overlaps this trigger box is this, then we can go ahead and proceed to do something, because the return value here is a Boolean, so it's either true or false. In this case, it should be true. So from here, we need the music manager reference again. I suppose I could just pull off this one and cross the wires, but I'd rather not. And what I'll do is type play music 2. Let's see if I have to turn off context sensitivity. Yeah, there we go. Play music 2. But there's no execution wire from either one of these. And what I want to do, if I'm checking to see if indeed it is the third-person character, what I want to do is use what's called a branch. So we can right-click and type branch, which is the most common way to handle a Boolean, sort of like an if-then or if-else statement in traditional programming. So you want to use flow control branch. And you'll see I can connect the execution pin from here to here on the branch, but the condition, in order for anything to come out of this true pin, is if this is true, if the other actor overlapping the trigger box is equal to our third-person character. So I can satisfy that condition, and if it's satisfied, that means there will be a pulse out of the true execution output to play the music, and if it's not true, then there will be an execution pulse here, and I can do something like a print string or maybe some other logic that I might need. So we'll compile and save. It looks like I forgot something. Oh yeah. Music manager reference is the target for play music. Of course it is. Play music 2. Hey, what happened there? Let's try that again. Music manager, BP music manager. No, I don't know how I ended up with that. So it is BP underscore music manager. I don't know how I somehow don't see it. I guess I never promoted it to a variable, but that's okay. I can duplicate it. And we'll use play music 2. Probably at some point I should have promoted this to a variable. This would have been a good place to do, or maybe on begin play, something like that. So that will play music 2. And then we need our third trigger box, which is this one. Highlight that, go back to our level blueprint. Right-click, turn on context sensitive, and do what we did before, make a collision event on begin overlap. And now all of this stuff is the same. So I'll copy that, and I'll paste it down here, connect this execution wire, because there's literally no difference in the logic except for what music is going to be played. So I'll pull off of my music manager and I'll type play music 3. Like so. Okay, so we'll compile and save. No errors. So now let's see if it works. Go into play. No music. Okay, so it seemed like something might have been weird on that one, so let's find out what happened. Other actor was not connected on this Boolean. That's why the third trigger box didn't work. So let's try again. Okay, so you can place trigger boxes like this throughout your level if you want to have the music change, or any number of things that can be accomplished by begin overlap events on trigger boxes, which are normally set to actor hidden in game. So what we'll do is we'll take each one of these and we'll set that to true again. And now when we play, we don't see them, but they retain their functionality. And it does not have to be overlaps with box triggers or anything like that necessarily to trigger different music to play. It can be based on any number of things, such as the spawning of an enemy, or being victorious in a battle, or just anything really. And the level blueprint is a really great way to make these things happen, because it's easy to get references to anything in the level blueprint. As an example, this BP_music manager, you may have recalled that I was looking for it and I just couldn't find it, but it was in my graph and it would be there if I had promoted it to a variable. But it doesn't matter. All I had to do is literally drag it from my content browser or from my world outliner. Anything that is in the world, okay, if I want to do something with it, I can drag it into the third person, I didn't mean to say third person. I meant to say level blueprint, okay? Because every character, every game, is going to have its own level blueprint in every level. So I can just get an easy reference to anything by dragging it in to the level blueprint, and then programming whatever needs to be programmed for that thing based on anything, okay? So this is a basic example of how you can set up vertical music switching. And I'll compile and save that. So what I would suggest that you do as a practice for this is, if you're comfortable making your own music, if you're someone who composes music in a digital audio workstation and you know how to make your own, go ahead and do that. I don't care how much production effort really is put into it for now. Of course, it is impressive if your music is fantastic, but I want to know that you're able to implement it more than anything, because even these 3 pieces of music were just music that I created within a matter of minutes and did not use all my audio engineering knowledge and chops to produce. I just made them as placeholders. And oftentimes in things like TV shows, movies, and video games, designers do use placeholder music. It's called temp music, with temp meaning temporary. Excuse me. So later, for example, you could replace these with more fully produced tracks, but at least you'll know how to get a system like this working, all right? And if you can think of something else, any other type of event that you can think of to make the music change, by all means, use your imagination and try a few things out. And you may be surprised by what you think of, okay? Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.